Love you, Dr. Ramirez. Good evening. Thanks everyone for coming. This is awesome. My name is Mara Paxson. I'm the lead school psychologist for the district. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about mental health as well as wellness and resiliency. Such an important topic right now, especially where we are with COVID and the last 2 years. But mental health and resiliency is something we really believe in across the district. And really teaching our kids how to bounce back during those difficult times. So overall, who has seen the PR graduate before? Oh, good show of hands. And looking at that PR graduate, those are pictures of our students. We really want to encourage in the elementary building, middle, high school, looking at good, healthy coping skills, right? Teaching our kids being healthy with their screen time, turning it off when they need to, getting enough sleep, good nutrition, because if we have some of that good health, that overall physical health, then we're better mentally. So we really want to encourage it not only in the elementary building, but also middle school, high school. But think about yourselves as parents, as grandparents, how do we support in terms of our own self-care? We need to also practice our self-care. So overall, we want to empower that resiliency. So who has seen the 2 circles before? Oh, I like this. The internal circle is really talking about those internal factors. We talk about good, healthy coping skills. The external circle is connection with others, the community, friends, family. And the idea behind that is we want to really have that interwoven weave of resources and supports. So we always want to have those supports so when times are difficult, our kids have the ability to bounce back. One of the cool things is in the schools, we really teach from a K through 3 level, like the zones, your emotions, how to teach coping skills and how to really deal with your emotions. At Eden Hall, we talk a little bit about, okay, what are some of those risk factors? How do I deal when I'm stressed? We talk to students about trusted adults, who are 2 people at home and 2 people at school that you could identify with. So in the middle school, we even go further, talking about risk factors, warning signs, and at the high school, we talk about anxiety and depression, and teaching our skills, some healthy coping skills to our students. So the 5 R's, we really want to encourage the 5 R's of reassure. We want our kids to hear that they're not alone, right? They're not alone in this. We're here to support them. Just like I said before, that PR graduate, routine is huge. So routine and rest. Because when we have that routine and that schedule, we feel better. You know, when you don't have that schedule, you feel stressed. So you want that routine, you want that schedule, but you also want that rest, healthy rest. Putting your phone down when you need to. Healthy connection. And then recreation, we need to be role models for our students. What are we doing in terms of recreation? Are we doing something for ourselves? Are we going for a run? Are we doing something to check out when we need to? Because when we check out, then we could reset again. And then reach out and refer. If kids are struggling, we need to reach out and refer and give the right level of supports for them. So looking at the stress, the seesaw, right? When we feel out of control, that we feel like we can't get control, we're up in the air. But when we feel in control, when things are feeling good, we can get back down again. You know, and when stress increases, if we're not coping effectively, it's difficult for us. So we always have to check in and reset with ourselves. But we have to know sometimes there's good stress and sometimes there's not so good stress. So what's that level? Good stress would be, I'm taking a test, I studied for that test. Not so good would be, hey listen, it's getting more and more, the intensity, the frequency, that duration of the stress level. So looking at that stress, and what if it's 2 weeks? Where we always say in psych services, if it's 2 weeks, the intensity, the duration, the frequency increases, maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression. Maybe students are thinking about thoughts to kill themselves. So we need to get help for that individual immediately. And that might look a little bit different for a student in the elementary building than it does for somebody at the middle school and the high school. So the idea behind it is we want to get help for that student immediately. And that is why we have such great people behind us today that I'm going to introduce you all to talk about some of the great services they have to offer. Has anyone ever seen the triangle before? So the triangle, we talk about the multi-tiered systems level of support. And the idea behind this triangle is we always, at the tier 1 level, we want to provide supports to all students. So we want to provide some good social emotional learning at that tier 1 level. What does that look like at the elementary school? What does it look like at the middle school? And what does it look like at the high school? So we want to give all students those services. At a tier 2, and Jen Miller will talk a little bit about this in regards to counseling services, that would be like group services, that would be friendship groups, going into the classroom, having one-to-one sessions with students. And then at a tier 3 level, that's more intensive services. That would be providing some services through school-based mental health, through our student assistance program, or meeting with a school psychologist like Dr. Kimmel or Dr. Ramirez with a one-to-one session or even in group sessions. So we'll talk a little bit more about the triangle today and levels of supports. So tier 1 would be for all students, tier 2 would be for some students, and tier 3 would be those more intensive services that we might provide kids if they need it. And we'll even talk about the intensity and level of those services. So today I want to go over and do a quick introduction. I'm going to start over there. Dr. Ramirez, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dr. Ramirez. I am the secondary school psychologist, 7 to 12.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Miller. I'm one of the counselors at Eden Hall and the department chair for school counseling.
And I'm Taylor Kimmel. I'm the elementary school psychologist.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Welshans. I'm the social worker here for Pine Richland School District.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Ashbaugh. I'm the executive director for HSAO.
Hi, my name is Scott Schreiber. I'm the Director of Behavioral Health Services at Holy Family Institute.
Good evening. I'm Paula Mccommons, and I'm with Services for Teens at Risk, part of the UPMC Western Behavioral Health, and also with the Student Assistance Program.
Hi, I'm Sarah Felica. I'm from UPMC Western Behavioral Health as well. I'm responsible for the acute partial hospital programs and intensive outpatient programs.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sean Sledjanowski. I'm School Services Coordinator and Child Grief Specialist with Highmark Caring Place. So in addition to supporting families at the Caring Place, I also work closely with school districts.
These are some of the great services that we have here. So when you think about that triangle, you think about tier 1 levels of support. Our counselors, and we're going to have Mrs. Miller talk a little bit about that tier 1 level of support that we provide all students. And then if you look at in terms of services that the school psychologists provide, one-to-one, some group counseling services, and then we'll talk about our student assistance program as well as referrals for additional support, school-based mental health, that goes into more intense levels at the STAR Clinic, the IOP, the partial program, and then we'll also talk about the Caring Place. So we have great partnerships with all of these places, and we're excited for us to share them with you, talk a little bit about wellness today, but also talk about really specifically mental health and supports for families. So I'm going to get started with Mrs. Miller, and we'll get started with the video.
Thanks. So school counselors are part of the school community and often working behind the scenes to develop one of the most important protective factors for children is to have that relationship with a trusted adult that's outside of their family, as well as helping them recognize that they have adults that they can bring concerns to within their family. But because we are often working behind the scenes, we thought it would be best if some of the students were able to give you a little more of a picture of what we do. Here at Pine Richland, we have certified school counselors available in every school building to help students get through their day. We provide social emotional supports to students, review academic growth, and talk with them about their career goals and future plans. In addition, at the elementary level, we visit classrooms on about a monthly basis. We provide lessons on coping skills, how to contact trusted adults, resiliency, and anti-bullying. School counselors also provide groups for students. We provide social skills instruction, some friendship and connection groups, as well as a partnership that we have with the Highmark Caring Place, where we're able to provide some grief groups with their assistance as well. We also work with students individually on specific problems or concerns and sit on district teams that review student growth and data. And we work closely with our school psychologist in order to provide intervention and enrichment through our multi-tiered systems of support.
So, first of all, I have had some rough days before. It was either sad or something happened, and I just needed to sit down and talk about my feelings, and Mrs. Pappas has helped me with that a lot.
Remember, you broke your necklace in first grade, and I took your necklace home and fixed it. Do you remember that? Yeah.
I do.
Do you still have the necklace?
She is very helpful in the school and just a miracle. She just helps so much. Like, if two friends are having a problem, she can usually fix it and have them friends again and not be mad at that person for the rest of the year. She really is very helpful to the school and is just amazing and a unicorn in our school.
Mrs. Miller has helped me a lot with mindfulness and like relaxing and like focusing on my feelings. And like just focusing on stuff that we normally wouldn't notice like helps a lot with that.
Miss Miller taught us about mindfulness. An example of that would be whenever she came to our classroom one time and taught us about imagining pushing your feet into mud and then letting go and teaching us to relax.
My school counselor, Miss Malays, helped me a lot throughout middle school. In 7th grade, I worked in an executive functioning group. In that group, I learned how to manage my materials, study skills, and most importantly, time management. Now in 8th grade, it has helped me because I've kept up in high honor roll all year and balanced grades with sports such as lacrosse and hockey. Thank you for Mrs. Malay.
I've learned through school counseling that it's okay to express your feelings and say them out loud, especially when you have great trusted adults right by your side.
Miss Harlack told me that if you keep holding in your feelings, it's just going to get worse, but if you talk to someone, it will always get better.
Mrs. Harlack taught me to use a gratitude journal to help me focus on the positive.
Hi, my name is Jen Bowers, and I'm a counselor at the high school. The counseling department's goal at the high school is to really develop those positive relationships with our students by meeting them. In 9th grade, we meet them individually to make sure they know where to find us and who we are and what we can do to support them at the high school. 10th grade, we work on graduation plans. 11th grade, it's really starting to figure out what they think they want to do after high school. And then 12th grade, senior appointments are helping them get those applications in and answer any of those questions. And so, again, our goal is to really meet our students as often as possible in that one-to-one setting. We also meet them in small groups and in classrooms. And when we're in the classroom, we talk about what they like and what they're good at and look at their strengths. And so all these things work together to build resiliency factors for students. In addition, as the suicide prevention coordinator at the high school, I provide lessons multiple times a year. One of the lessons is absolutely on responsible reporting, what to do, who to call, how to contact somebody. I email kids information all the time. Other lessons can vary. We talk about stress management techniques. We talk about the difference between depression and stress and how to cope with each of those. Really, the hope is to help kids establish that healthy optimism where they can find the bright side, even when things sort of look not so great. But to look and say, okay, it was one test. I can do this. There's time to build that up. Or, I had one bad period or one bad day. This is going to get better. And so, again, we work on things, on building those resiliency factors with students. In addition, did you know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month? Well, it is. Here at the high school, we will be doing a Mental Health Awareness Month activities. There's going to be posters around the building. We have a big banner coming up that says we stand with mental health, where the kids are going to sign. That will happen this week. And then I'm partnering with Peer-to-Peer and Mrs. Straub, and together we are going to do Wellness Wednesdays throughout the month of May. And so we'll have different activities each Wednesday in the cafeteria for students to participate in. And along with that is always information, resources for help, as well as information about depression, anxiety, what you can do. Another factor, with high school kids, it's a lot of planting seeds. And so on the back of every bathroom in the building is a resource list of contact information if you're just having a bad day, of who you can go to. But, bottom line is that we're here for kids. We want to make sure that kids are okay, and our doors are always open.
Hi, I'm Missy Ramirez. I am the secondary school psychologist, and I support the administrators and school counseling team on the secondary campus. Some of the programming that I continue to support would be the Student Assistance Program, our MTSS teams, which is our multi-tiered system of supports for all students, executive functioning programming, gifted education teaming. There's lots of ways we provide high-quality intentional programming for all students. Thanks for listening tonight, and we'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. We thought it was so great to hear from our kids, too, about some of those good coping skills and working with our school counselors and what we're doing at the elementary school and what we're all the way up to the high school, that continuum of supports for our students. Wanted to talk a little bit and see if Dr. Kimball could just share in terms of psych services, what does that look like in the schools in terms of counseling as well as some group services that we're providing our students?
Sure. So at the elementary level as well as secondary, we provide group counseling services. Sometimes those are co-facilitated with the counselors, working on specific skills like emotion regulation, social emotional learning, social language skills. Sometimes we meet with students individually that might need that more individualized supports, and we're in constant collaboration with the school teams, parents, outside providers if needed. So we're always trying to kind of build supports around students and collaborate as much as possible.
And then Dr. Ramirez, from the high school standpoint, secondary, middle school and high school, can you share a little bit about some of those supportive services?
Sure. So we sit on almost all of the teams, right, to help and support every student. So student assistance teaming, MTSS teams. We sit and talk about enrichment and gifted for students, but then I'm also a sponsor for one of our clubs. There's actually a wide variety of things that I get to do every single day with students, and it's a great experience.
Excellent, thank you. And Mrs. Bowers just walked in, one of our school counselors. She doesn't even know. I'm going to do a little bit impromptu. Anything you want to share in terms of counseling supports and suicide prevention?
I'm sorry I'm late. It was on the calendar for 6:30. I'm so sorry. I think you saw what I talked about, but we try to really get to know our students, and our doors are always open, and so we try to make sure that our faces are very visible. And students can come in at any time. They can make an appointment, they can stop in, we go to the bathrooms and find them sometimes, take phone calls from parents, but really we are here to help and support and connect. And so we also sit on the SAP team and the People Services team to really help build that safety net. We also participate in our case managers for 504 agreements, which are agreements for students with non-learning disabilities, kids with anxiety or attention issues. So we try and catch kids as much as we can and as best as we can, and just make sure that they know us so that we're here.
And she helps support a lot. She mentioned this in the video, a lot of the suicide prevention and doing things and working with the peer-to-peer group, as well as suicide prevention. You're offering some offerings for May that you're going to talk about and work with our students on through peer-to-peer and other groups. So thank you, Mrs. Bowers. I really put you on the spot. We are now going to just talk about the Student Assistance Program. We're going to have Carolyn Welshantz just walk through it. And talk about what that looks like in terms of a referral, because parents can make a referral, a student can make a referral, and the levels of support that we can provide our families through our student assistance program. So, Mrs. Welshantz?
Yes, thank you. So I'm so happy tonight to be here talking to you about our student assistance program, because it really is a fantastic program that we have here at Pine Richland that supports our students and our families. And sometimes it's not a program that people understand is available. So thank you so much for coming out tonight to learn about what we are offering here at Pine Richland, and please share all the information you learned tonight with other families, because we want all of our students to make use of our resources. So as Dr. Paxson said, I'm here to talk about our student assistance program. SAP that's what we call it, our SAP program. SAP is a state mandated program, so that means every school in Pennsylvania has to have SAP teams
in each of their K through 12 buildings. So here at Pine Richland, we do have a SAP team available for all of our students, kindergarten through 12th grade. Our SAP teams, SAP was started back in 1984, so it's actually been in existence for a very long time. However, I've really noticed a lot of strengthening over the last probably 15 years. So the state really getting involved in making sure schools are putting together strong SAP teams to support our students and make sure they're receiving the resources in the community as well as school. Our SAP teams here at Pine Richland consist of our building administrators. We are extremely fortunate to have a lot of support from our school principals. It's not every school in Pennsylvania has the support of their administrators for their SAP team, but here at Pine Richland, our principals sit on every team meeting and they are a big part of our collaboration. They've also allotted time for our teachers who sit on our SAP team to work with our students, make contact with families, all of those things that are essential for our SAP team members to be able to do. Also on our SAP team, we have teachers who are trained in the SAP model, and they tend to be the case managers for our students when we have student referrals. Our school psychologists sit on our team meetings, and they too attend each and every one of our meetings, which adds a great deal of collaboration and allows us to really think outside the box and best support our students. We also have school nurses, as well as our school counselors. And let me make sure I'm not missing anybody. I think that's about it. Oh, no. Our community liaison, which is also a very big part of the SAP process. I have Lisa Ashbaugh from HSAO sitting here beside me. I don't want to steal her thunder, so she'll be able to tell you about what resources HSAO can offer our students, but it's because we collaborate with HSAO, we have the ability to help our students find those resources outside of the school setting. So looking at therapeutic services and hospitalization type programs, any service that our students might need. Again, we are very lucky here at Pine Richland to collaborate with HSAO. They have a wealth of knowledge as to what resources are available to our students. They know who is currently taking clients as well as what insurance each provider expects to utilize. They are just extremely helpful. I can't say enough about how supported we really are here at Pine Richland. If anybody has ever tried to navigate the mental health world, it's very, very tricky. It's really hard to figure out who is taking clients, what resource is appropriate for your child, or even for your family, and that's where HSAO steps in seamlessly. They are able to provide us with a screening that connects you to the appropriate resource. So let me tell you a little bit about the SAP process. It has 4 phases. Through our SAP process, we start with a referral, and as Dr. Paxson said, anybody can make a referral. So that means our teachers can make referrals, our school counselors, administrators, and that tends to be where most of our referrals come from because they see our students day in and day out, and they know about our SAP program. We've really worked hard over the years to make sure our teachers have really good, solid information as to what SAP can do for students. And that way that helps them to make really good referrals to the program. Like I said, they see your students every day, so they can see when a student is struggling pretty quickly and send a referral our way. But it's not only school staff who can make referrals, parents can also make a referral. It's really probably easiest for parents just to reach out to school counselors or administrators, myself, or really any school personnel to get connected with the SAP process. We do have information on our school website that's pretty easy to find, so I would encourage you to check that out as well. Once a referral is made, I reach out to families to see if families are interested in getting involved, having their student involved in the SAP team. If parents are interested, then that's when we get the process started. So if we get the permission from parents, we move into our team planning phase. That's the point where I bring the student's name to the SAP team. Together, we decide who the SAP case manager would be. So that would be the person who's going to be meeting with the student and getting to know them and kind of serve as a mentor for that student. That case manager will also be reaching out to family as well as teachers. That way that really helps to increase communication, which is a lot of times a big piece of the puzzle. The SAP case manager, after they collect their data, they bring it back to the SAP team. And then that's when we really get to work and try to develop a plan that's most supportive for the student. We could decide that the student could use some community resources, so that's when we get HSAO involved, or sometimes we're just utilizing the resources that we have available to us in the school. And I'll talk a little bit about what those look like here in just a minute. So then we move into our intervention and recommendation phase, and that's when we're talking with families and students about what we would recommend for them, which interventions we think would be best suited for them. And again, as a team, we make decisions as to how to move forward, and we move into our support and follow-up phase. That's our final phase, and the importance of that phase is that we're just continuing to meet with the student as well as communicate with family and teachers to make sure that the interventions we put in place are in fact working for the student. If they are not working, then the SAP team just goes back to the drawing board to think of other ideas that maybe we haven't thought of in the past. We continue to follow up with students and with family members throughout the entire school year. So our SAP process lasts for 1 school year, and we stay committed to that student for that year. We do sometimes have students who continue SAP into the next school year, but we start with new permissions and just kind of make sure we just start at a different spot, so each year looks a little different for our students. So let me tell you a little bit about some numbers that we have from last year. So last year here at Pine Richland, we had 329 referrals to the SAP program. We had just about 200 parents say yes to the SAP program and get their student involved. There was about a little over 100 that did not follow through with the SAP process, and honestly, sometimes that's just because the process wasn't necessary for the student. So it wasn't always a parent refusal. Sometimes the process just wasn't necessary. Out of the 200 cases that we had over 100 screenings occur here in the district. So that means screenings that helped get our students connected with those community resources. Sometimes the screening is not necessary because our students come to us already connected with resources, but other times the screening is an important piece there. Some of the interventions that we have to use here at school are mentorship type programs. Sometimes that's with the case manager, or if our student acknowledges that they have a trusted adult in the school that they really have grown attached to, we will set them up as a mentor for the student. We do educational planning with our teachers. Sometimes that means just kind of like helping to figure out a good plan of action for the student for particular classes. We have executive functioning support. We have our math help lab, peer tutoring. We have groups such as social skills, grief, anxiety, friendships groups, as well as more groups at the elementary level. We have check-in and check-out processes, behavior plan developments, referral to the MTSS process. We have a new program here at Pine Richland called Check and Connect, which is an intensive program of a mentor and a student checking in together on a very regular basis. And then we also have our screening through HSAO. So I'm going to wrap up just by giving you a couple common questions that I get when I reach out to families about the SAP program. So parents often ask me, how long does SAP last? SAP does last for 1 school year, so each year we need to get new permissions, but like I said, sometimes we have students who want to roll over into the next school year. So if that's the case, we keep that case going, we just ask for new permissions. Parents also ask me, who knows that my student is involved in the SAP program? Only the SAP team members know, as well as your students' teachers, because we do want to reach out to the teachers and collaborate with them. But other than that group of people, everything is confidential within SAP. Who will find out what the screening recommends? Well, that information stays with the SAP team. And if we have a family who doesn't want the school personnel to be aware of what the screening recommends, we can work with that too. However, we do like to utilize our SAP team members because there really is merit in what we're doing through our SAP process. But screening recommendations do stay with our SAP team members. Is SAP confidential? It absolutely is confidential. All of our team members are trained in the SAP process, and confidentiality is a very big piece of that training. Does SAP information follow my student? It does not follow your student. So SAP case files are kept separate from educational files, so you don't have to worry about that confidential information being given to new school districts unless that's something you would request us to do. How do I tell my student about SAP? We think it's very important, if you're interested in getting your student signed up in SAP, that you communicate with them and let them know that this is something you think is going to be beneficial to them. If a family is nervous about sharing that information with their student, we can absolutely provide support and help with that communication with SAP.
Carolyn, can I ask a question? How, in terms of, and this is some questions that we receive from families too, what if a student is younger? We always say any barriers to learning, right? And what if a student is younger and parents are wondering, does their child have the diagnosis of attention deficit or struggling with behavior and want resources? Can you still go through SAP?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the great thing about the SAP process is we can either filter things through our MTSS process and through our resources here at school, or look at those outside connections that can do those kinds of screenings and things like that.
And some of the examples that you provide in terms of interventions, those are in-house interventions that are offered in the school. Are they offered K through 12 all the way through?
Yes, they are offered K through 12 all the way through.
Okay.
My last couple of common questions that I have here are, does my student have to have drug and alcohol concerns in order to get involved in SAP? Because that is one piece of SAP, but no, your student does not have to have drug and alcohol. It is anybody who has any barrier to learning, so that can be a wide variety of things. However, sometimes when people see our information about what is SAP, drug and alcohol is listed on there, and so that's a little frightening for some of our families. But we do help many, many students who do not struggle with drug and alcohol concerns. And then finally is SAP voluntary. It is 100% voluntary. If we have a family that says no thank you to SAP, we respect that decision, and we would continue to update you with anything that we continue to see at school and encourage SAP if we think that it would be helpful, but it's always a voluntary program, and so parents can say no at any time and students can say no at any time. And now I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, who's a huge supporter of the SAP program.
One more question I have for you, Carolyn, in terms of family involvement. How do you get parents involved as part of the SAP process?
Yeah, so family involvement starts with me, so or the school counselors when we're reaching out to tell families what SAP is and that their student was referred to the SAP program. So that's where the communication starts. Once the case is assigned to a case manager, that case manager would be communicating with family members on a regular basis, just making sure things are going okay at home, and then we are able to identify how things are going at school.
And I know Dr. Ramirez just wanted to mention a little bit about Check and Connect.
I did. So Check and Connect is an amazing program. It's a newer program, something that we started this year through thinking about how we needed to respond to student need. And Check and Connect, if you remember Mara's triangle, right? All students, 80, 25. Check and Connect is for that very small few number of students. And I will say, SAP has been an amazing vehicle to get students what they need. In addition, we've sort of latched Check and Connect onto our SAP programming. So when students are referred, it's another avenue for intervention for students. And I would say in that small group, we have seen huge successes. In fact, today I was talking to one of our administrators about Check and Connect in this individual's life, and there was lots of attendance tardy issues, lots of behavior concerns, and those have almost been completely negated. And I really truly believe it's through the use of SAP and Check and Connect and understanding student need through all of these interventions and programming. So I just wanted to highlight that because that is a newer thing for us, and I'm very excited to have that.
And again, it's about building those connections and having that connection with the trusted adult. Because part of Check and Connect is really connecting with the adult, checking in with them in the morning, the afternoon, and setting goals together, which is important. Excellent. Excellent. Lisa, would you like to talk to us a little bit about the referral process with HSAO and next steps?
Thank you. So thank you very much for allowing us to be here this evening. I think that Carolyn did a phenomenal job of explaining what SAP is, and HSAO has had the pleasure of being the SAP liaison provider for the Pine Richland School District for about the past 5 years. And so we have some various functions that we provide as being participants on that team, one of them being just a participant on that team. So we actually are there for all of the core team meetings at all of the buildings at the designated times that they are scheduled. And we really provide consultation and sometimes education, as well as gathering all of that information for students that have been referred for that level of screening that Carolyn has referred to. So once a student has been referred for screening, that we've already kind of acquired parent permission, and really the next step is for us to meet with that student and start to gather information. We also are looking at making connections with parents and guardians to also get information from them to support the information that we're gathering for the screening. And really we're looking at strengths and needs, right? So we're talking about maybe what's a barrier to learning at this point in time, but we're also really focusing on what's going well. What is that student really good at? What supports do they have in the school? Who's the go-to person they have? I think someone else mentioned, who are your 2 people that you have in the school that you can connect with? And those are really important things when we're talking about kind of building resiliency and also trying to put a plan together that's going to best kind of support that student and their needs. So we're looking at referrals for behavioral health, some of the things that we are talking about, kind of health and wellness here this evening, but there's lots of other things that can come out of that screening. Looking at things such as social determinants of health, so things such as needs for housing or food instability. We're looking at connections to physical health if there are issues with a student and needing some connections at that level. We're looking at things such as specialized services, maybe grief and loss services that we've been talking about, trauma, and also things such as drug and alcohol needs. So there's a wide array of things that we're looking at in terms of that screening and what we can gather from there. And really the liaison's role at that point is to help to link that student and that family to services. Key point here is Carolyn mentioned that everything's voluntary. And that's still the case as well when we're looking at referrals to services, but also families have choice. So we're always looking at what services does that family want, how do you want them delivered, and what's the best way to do that? Is that in your community? Is that a service that's already in existence in the school? And how can we kind of help you to link to that next support? So we help to make those referrals for families, and we also help to provide follow-up. So making sure that that connection is there. We know that sometimes services are started and they stop for various reasons. A therapist leaves. Your student decides they don't connect with that person and they don't want to go to therapy anymore. So we're always just kind of checking in to make sure that that service is still applicable, that that student is still participating, and as Carolyn mentioned, that we really can follow that student for the remainder of the school year.
So Lisa, like a referral will be made through SAP. So through that referral, then one of your HSAO case managers would possibly do a screening and work closely with the family. So and then, because it's such a challenge sometimes when we're looking for mental health services for students. Even looking for a child psychiatrist can be a challenge. So can you just explain a little bit about like what that looks like?
Sure. So I think when we're talking about we complete the screening and there's a recommendation that comes out of that screening, it could be for anything along the continuum of care. And I can probably jump to there because I feel like we're moving right along here. The continuum of care, when we refer to in the county, is very rich in services. And we look at it kind of on a continuum. So we look at least restrictive through most restrictive. Least restrictive are things such as outpatient therapy. So that could be individual therapy, that could be family therapy, that could be group therapy. Referrals for maybe play therapy, medication management, referral for maybe a parent support group. And those services are typically offered either inside your home, outside in the school, or in the community as well. And we all know that with the changes with the pandemic, that there are various ways now to receive services via telehealth. So there are options for services to be delivered kind of on a social platform as well. When you move along the continuum, I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I have a lot of colleagues here that have a lot of expertise in a lot of areas, and they're going to focus on some of those higher levels of care. But as you move along the continuum, you see that there are kind of things that come up in terms of levels of eligibility and recommendations. So when you are looking for things that are on the more restrictive level of care, you might need an evaluation from a doctor to get that level of care. You might need a particular set of insurance to access those levels of care. And so we really are looking at least restrictive first, and then helping students to have access to those services. Currently, unfortunately, and there's a lot of it that's kind of a result of the pandemic and workforce issues, is there are a lot of waiting lists for services. If you've experienced even trying to navigate the system, it's a little bit difficult at this point. So we're looking at kind of creative ways to kind of bridge the gap sometimes for students. If there's a level of care that may have been recommended and it's not available maybe for a month or two, what could we be doing in the interim to help to support that? And I think that Pine Richland does a phenomenal job of being able to look at how can we put in services, whether they're services that are offered in the school or how we can brainstorm as a team to make sure that that student has what they need in the interim. We're also looking at things such as non-traditional services. So a lot of the PCPs have kind of developed an integrated model of physical health and behavioral health. Sometimes they have services within their practices that you could access, therapeutic services, therapy, even psychiatric services, and community-based partners that we have, as well as some of our faith-based partners. So there's opportunities to have some services in some of those platforms as well. Anything else about that? Okay.
That's perfect.
Okay.
Yep.
I think the last in the continuum, and it'll be a good segue for me, is service coordination. I think Carolyn touched upon that a little bit. HSAO by trade is a specialized case management agency, and so we have 9 child and adolescent programs, 8 of them outside of our SAP program, that we can refer students to. So as I mentioned, there's family choice. So aside from us, there's probably about 11 other service coordination programs in the county. Everybody doesn't have to come through us. If families have a need or a want to go someplace else, we're always able to provide that, those options to families as well. But through HSAO, we do have, as I mentioned, a wide array of services. It really is about having a point person to be able to help you navigate through the system, whether that's navigating through linkage to services. It could be navigating access to insurance. So we have families that might have underinsured or not insured, or not the particular right insurance that would be needed to access a particular service. So we could help with insurance related needs. Access to service provisions, connections to social activities. So we often look at kids, you know, it's not just school, it's not just home. There's a lot of need when we're looking at kind of connecting kids in the community, and how can we help families to access those types of services as well. And things such as summer camps. There's so many things I think that you can look at in terms of a lot of what we're talking about tonight is wellness, and there's so many dimensions of wellness that we can really help families to access. And whether that's for your student, that could be really for yourself, or it could even be us helping to assist with maybe other siblings in the home as well. And what do I want to talk about here? So I think the only other thing about HSAO that I wanted to kind of focus on is that we partner with a lot of different system partners. So we're here tonight talking about our collaboration and relationship with the school, but we also provide linkage and support to a lot of other services. So we have collaborations with, I mentioned physical health partners. We have collaborations with our child welfare system. We have collaborations with our juvenile probation system, with physical health providers, and we also have our Office of Developmental Supports as well. So really, if there's any need across the continuum, we can help families get linked to those services. Service coordination also kind of follows a continuum as well. So there's levels of services, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think it quick to just highlight is there is a service probably for everybody. Our administrative service coordination is really just an as-needed service. So it's really you deciding when you need support and how you want that support. You make the phone call, no one's calling you, no one's kind of dictating how often they have to see you, coming into your home, those kinds of things. They're able to help you access services, but there's not really any program standards or regulatory kind of provisions that we have to follow in order for that service to be delivered. And then we have the higher continuum on the service coordination side, which requires a prescription for services. It requires some regulatory standards, how often we have to see people face to face. And sometimes that's not what people need. I think Carolyn had mentioned before that it's really about kind of a menu of what you need for your student and your family and how we can help connect you to that.
I would just say, Lisa, it is a challenge sometimes working with insurances and talking about more intensive services for students, and working with HSAO has been so helpful to get families the services that they need, but that could certainly be a challenge at times.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's difficult to navigate at times because there's so many levels of care and there's so many providers, and sometimes they all have a different process and they all accept a different insurance. And as you get higher on the continuum, a lot of families have their own private insurance, and sometimes, unfortunately, with private insurance, you can't access some levels of care, and there's kind of subsequent insurance that we would need to help families get linked to sometimes
So that might be like IOP, the partial program, like a more intensive service, family-based resources in the home. So some of those additional resources that are brought to our families, but it's difficult sometimes working with those insurances and navigating them.
Absolutely, and I think our staff do a really great job of being to help families to navigate that. So what application do you have to fill out? What sections do you have to complete? What is the language that you need to use? Where do you need to have that sent to be able to get that process? So we've been able to.
And can you just speak briefly to HSAO and some of the groups that you offer in terms of that partnership and through SAP? We also, through HSAO, they also offer groups to our students all from K through 12.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped over that. I think we jumped right in the excitement of the continuum of care. So we provide, as part of our SAP Liaison role, we call them psychoeducation groups because they're not clinical groups. We're not therapists, and we don't provide a therapeutic group. But as was mentioned, we can provide education and skill development. So we run groups. We have kind of a menu of groups that we offer. And during the SAP team meetings, we really talk about, are there students that are identified that might be appropriate for those groups? And then how can we help them to access? There is a separate consent form that we ask families to sign, kind of just acknowledgement that that student is able to participate in some of those groups, and just a variety things such as peer relationships, anger management, hygiene, social media, and recently this year we were able to get certified to do some groups on vaping and nicotine cessation, which we've seen some of that increase over the past year as well.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure. And I think lastly, and I don't want to continue to talk, but I think lastly, just important to note, and Carolyn did mention this, is drug and alcohol services. So as a part of HSAO, there are a couple things that we can offer, and Scott's going to talk a little bit about drug and alcohol services as well. But one of the things that we have as part of our agency is what's called Act 53. And Act 53 is a law in the state of PA that goes back to about 1997, and it's really about addressing involuntary commitment to minors to drug and alcohol treatment, which is really against their will at that point. So for students who really don't want to participate in services. And it's about really giving the opportunity. Previous to the act, there was only access to those services with kids that were adjudicated through the court process, whether that was through our child welfare system as dependent or through our juvenile justice system as delinquent. And this was really about kind of developing an option for families to be able to access services for their kids when they were unwilling to participate. So we collaborate in Allegheny County with Juvenile Court, the Department of Human Services, and we actually have the coordinator for that program that's part of our agency as well. And that really just kind of entails being able to help that family navigate the court hearing process, going in front of the judge. We are able to do a level of care assessment to kind of give recommendations about what level of care that student might need in the drug and alcohol continuum of care, and then really help to make a decision, I should say, help to present the information to the judge who makes the decision about kind of next steps in that process. And lastly, I just want to mention that the past couple months, our agency launched one of the first drug and alcohol case management programs for teens, which is super exciting for us. So we are able to provide case management services for youth 10 to 18. Previously, drug and alcohol case management was only eligible for adults 18 and up. So we are able to, similarly as we do for behavioral health, really look at per the screening, and sometimes if there's a need for a level of care assessment, to link students to services across the drug and alcohol continuum as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Scott Schreiber is here to talk about school-based mental health services, but also the SHORES program. Something that I don't know if you're aware of, but we do have school-based mental health services through Holy Family, and we've had it for the past 7 years, K through 12. And what the referrals in terms of services, sometimes at times throughout the school year, there might be 30 students getting support, up to 50 at different times. That's a positive because it's a preventive measure and kids are getting supportive services right within their school day. So that would eliminate any barriers. They would have it during the school day if they have after school activities or parents are working. Those services are offered right here within their school day, and that's K through 12 in all of the elementary buildings, our middle school and our high school, as well as Eden Hall. So we're sad. We recently heard from Holy Family that they're no longer able to provide those services due to the high referral rate and having therapists available, just to where we are right now nationally. So we're happy to have Scott here tonight just to share a little bit, but also he's going to talk about school-based, but also the SHORES program, which discusses a little bit about drug and alcohol and some of those supportive services.
Thanks. So Mark touched upon some of the points that we were talking about, but just to sort of talk about school-based and how it works. School-based is a nice opportunity to receive the services in terms of the kids. You know, if the student is struggling with depression, anxiety, any trauma, they're getting the same clinical care that they would be in the community. And as Mara said, you know, it really overcomes barriers. One of the first years when Holy Family provides school-based outpatient in several districts. In the one district that we were in, the first year we were in, we had all these students come in the school year. And then come the end of May through August, we hardly had any kids throughout the summer. And so when I was talking to the administrator there, I was like, I don't understand, like, what happened to all the kids? And she was like, Scott, that's the whole idea. Like, if we didn't have it in the school, the kids would not be getting it. So it really does help the kids overcome those, help the families overcome the barriers at getting the services to the kids. The process works the same as you would be in the community. You know, some parents sometimes are a little hesitant to utilize the school because they're like, I don't want the school to know, you know, that my kid's receiving therapy. Well, the parent kind of controls that along with the student. So, you know, whatever occurs in that therapy session is still confidential. It doesn't mean that the therapist then goes and talks to the counselors and say, hey, this is what we were discussing. Usually that is done in coordination just in terms of scheduling and as a partnership. Sometimes if a counselor is working with, or if a therapist is working with a student and they had kind of a rough session, maybe talking about something deep, they might talk to the student and then say, hey, what's our game plan to help you keep calm if by chance that you're getting a little upset today? So they might ask if it's okay to share that information with a teacher or counselor to say, hey, this is our safety plan. So if Johnny's feeling a little rough today, he might ask to come down and sit at the guidance for 15 minutes because we had a rough session. Is that okay? So that confidentiality piece, I know sometimes parents are a little concerned about that, but it really is as confidential as it is going into the community. And as Mara said, it is a very good service that is available in the school. And as Mara said, unfortunately there is currently this year, and we've seen it across the board, there's been a lot of barriers in a lot of agencies in terms of staffing and just being able to, and long wait lines. So unfortunately a lot of providers have had to manage that.
But overall, Sean, just keeping in mind, we've had over 3 or 4 therapists that were working here that provided school-based mental health services. So at times they were in our elementary building, they might be at Eden Hall, middle school or high school. We had a high referral rate at Eden Hall in the middle school, and certainly thinking about those years, kids certainly need those services during those times, right? But also, you had almost 2 therapists here at the high school at one point. So we were certainly, families were utilizing those services, students were utilizing those services. So it is positive, and we are currently interviewing right now for our new school-based mental health provider, and we hope to have that information to all of you. But appreciate you being here this evening. I don't know, do you want to briefly go over just a little bit about the SHORES program about drug and alcohol?
Absolutely. So what is SHORES is a outpatient drug and alcohol program. So it's almost like mental health, where you would go talk to a therapist 1 day a week, except SHORES is with drug and alcohol, but it's a mobile service. So how we are sort of in partnership with Pine Richland is SHORES is unique in the fact that it's the only mobile outpatient program in Allegheny County. So we are able to provide services in an office setting. We're able to come to your home. We're able to do it within a school setting as long as the school provides us with a confidential space. More often than not, whenever a student is struggling with drug and alcohol issues, and if they'd be referred for services, our assessor can come out, we can do a level of care assessment, and then we can continue to actually provide services, as I said, with either in the school, the home, or the office. That is also a confidential process in terms of when the counselor comes to the school to ask to see the student. The school does not know, who that individual is. They would just be like, I'm such and such from Holy Family, I'm here to see a student, and that's kind of coordinated. So that's a very confidential process as well. But the nice thing about that is that you do have the option to receive that service within a school, office, or in a home setting. In that referral process, lots of times, if it's a referral through SAP, the liaison for the SAP program will provide that referral form to the parent, or they could just look us up, call our program, and get a referral for the program.
And that's linked to, is the referral process linked to the presentation? We'll make sure that it's linked, just so, because it could be through SAP, but it also could, parents could also contact the referral process through themselves and go online.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Excellent. I'll make sure that it's linked. So the next person I would like to introduce today is Dr. Paula Mccommons. Dr. Mccommons works through STAR. She does a lot of training and consulting. We work really closely with Paula. She's a true mentor, has supported us with understanding depression, anxiety in students, but also suicide prevention and intervention, and really building some of that resiliency in our students and in our families. So I'm happy to hear her speak today and share some of her knowledge.
Thank you so much, Mara, and I've been eager to jump out of my seat right now. And before I go any further, I just want to commend the district, all of you, students, families, faculty, support staff here, the student services. So unless you haven't had one since the pandemic, may I give you all a standing ovation.
That is why we invite Paula Mccommons.
All right, now I can continue. I think it's important that we celebrate, right? There's so much to be heavy about given the pandemic, and even though we've had the vaccines, or maybe not, or we've had the booster, or maybe not, we're doing the best that we can, right? And we're showing up in whatever way that is. And it's so important that we remember that when we're looking in the mirror, we are looking back at one of the most protective factors in our young person's life. So whether or not they are related to us, whether or not they are in our charge because they're a student of ours in whatever capacity that is, we have an opportunity to be one of their caring adults and be an informed adult that knows to listen, to ask questions, and knows when to act in some way. And I think it's so important that when we talk about mental health, behavioral health, we're also talking about ourselves. So that our kids, regardless if it's the little ones or the older ones, they are feeding off of whether or not we have our own anxiety, our own stress about things, our own, perhaps untreated whatever it is that maybe before the pandemic we were taking a little bit better care of ourselves. And since then we're struggling a little bit more, or whether or not it's our adolescent that can't wait to point out the hypocrite that we are, right? We educate them to speak their mind, right? And then except whenever we don't like what they're saying, right? Then it's a little too close to home. So it's real important that we get into a space for ourselves. We are the human tool. So it's okay to not have an answer. It's okay to reach out for help. I mean, I applaud you all. So I've also worn a hat of student assistance for almost 30 years in the county, worked in multiple school districts, and with my STAR hat, Services for Teens at Risk, I've I have been involved at the state level with suicide prevention and intervention. So I can actually say, I commend you all. You are doing what is therapeutic without it being therapy per se, unless you are hooked up with one of the school psychologists for some of that other students and families have to go to therapy to receive. So even though we talk about the national crisis that is mental health care access for our children and for our young people, the district is doing wonderful things in terms of being able to provide those 3 levels of care in terms of universal, the more selected, and then the targeted. So to have some hope with that, because I can think it's so easy to get discouraged with that. So when I talk about our safety net is not solid. Our safety net will never be solid because we're still dealing with human beings. Those that are our little ones and those that are our colleagues and each other. That doesn't mean that we have to be discouraged, but we can be offering realistic hope. Because I think sometimes when we set ourselves up, all you need is a therapist, all you need is to take medication, all you need is to whatever, that then we set folks up, well, wait a minute, I didn't respond in that period of time, or that didn't work for me. So that we allow for individual differences, and we make sure that if it doesn't work, that we don't give up, that we then say, okay, take a step back, who else do I need to talk to? So I realize we are close on time, and I have a plethora of slides anytime I get an opportunity to share what I think is important information. I want to make sure I have an opportunity to do that. So I'm just going to highlight a couple things for you. Actually, can we go back just one more for 1 second? Yeah. So in terms of what's normal and what isn't, if you're asking the question, you probably need a second opinion. Okay? And that second opinion can be any of the folks that you've already been introduced to. It can also be your primary care doctor. It can also be your neighbor. It could also be your sister in Seattle. And hopefully I'm going to get a chance to highlight, and if not, it'll be part of the slide presentation. There are some wonderful national and local resources. And I know we get information overload. All you need is 1 or 2 go-tos. Childline Institute is one of them that I highly recommend. And they have wonderful, timely topics. So whether or not it's how do I talk to my child about all the horror that they're seeing with the war in Ukraine? How do I dealing with the stress for the holidays? How do I deal with, whatever it might be, insurance issues? So they're very timely, they're very brief, they're very succinct, but they really are very powerful and pertinent in terms of mental health issues. In terms of the buffet of options, I like to I get the idea of what are those things within those 5 R's, within your resiliency that you're already doing in your natural supports. What are some of those things that you can reach out in terms of support groups or things online, other ways to get information? And then what are we talk about then in terms of treatment, whether or not it's outpatient, which could be at the school, whether or not we're talking about a higher level of care, like outpatient that might be at home as well as at school. It's called intensive behavioral health services. An IOP program where we're saying, hey, my kiddo's having trouble getting to school, my kiddo's having trouble functioning at school, so they need to have a little bit more flexibility in terms of having higher levels of treatment, usually 3 days a week, part-time during the day, so they're coming to school a little bit and then getting their treatment. If that's still not working, then maybe we need to look at a partial program where the medical issues, those emotional issues, are trumping the academic issues. So they would have 4 days a week usually of having their treatment or therapy, as well as still having some schooling, but the priority is to get them stabilized so that they're able to then return to that least restrictive as soon as possible. And then for students that are feeling unsafe and that aren't able to keep themselves safe, then looking at hospitalization. And that is a stabilization. There's a myth, unfortunately, that if I go inpatient and then my kid, or not me, but if my child goes inpatient and they get discharged, they must be okay. No, they've been stabilized to then go down to that lower level of care. And so being able to recognize that in any level of these care, even if we're on the buffet where I'm just not really that hungry, I just need to kind of get back into my sleep routine or whatever, that we remember that we're not alone, that truly it is a team effort wherever you are in terms of getting those services. And last but not least, looking at crisis intervention services. And so again, as that caring adult, and even with every student I work with, when I'm pointing my finger saying, hey, you might want to consider, I remind them that I'm like, all right, Paula Sue, I got a thumb and 3 fingers looking right back at me if I would need those services, or if I need to kind of call my backup, that we're making sure that we're kind of walking that walk in some way. So I think sometimes we get blindsided a little bit about like, oh my God, it's my kid, and sometimes we then shut down rather than taking that moment to be able to reach out and model that to our students. The other that I wanted to mention, the oxygen mask, right? So you're on the plane, the light goes on, right? And what do? We put the mask on our 3-year-old, we pass out and hope the 3-year-old, paid attention when the stewardess was saying whatever. I know that sounds so trite, but it is so critically important, because even now, we still, most of us, I think, would say that we have pandemic brain, right? Even if we didn't have COVID, right? Like our memory, our sleep sometimes gets more hijacked. Our ability to multitask is like, no, it's not there anymore. And rather than judging ourselves, again, opportunity, being able to give and receive grace, being able to say that rather than judging what's going on, that I'm aware of it. And once I'm aware of it, what can I choose differently? So that last little bit there, having compassionate connections, that whole idea of being a protective factor. The other is recognizing we're not alone. So making connections is so paramount to having positive health. So when we talk about the ramifications from, or trends, if you will, from the pandemic, the isolation triggered depression in a lot of our kids, and even us as adults. Having lack of sunlight early on, I was seeing in elementary kids, because again, we didn't know what was going on, right? That even being outside, we weren't sure what was safe. The lack of sunlight was triggering depressive symptoms. So what we've been sort of like, oh my God, we're managing one thing, and then we're now managing, now we're hybrid, and now we're quote unquote out, but what does that mean? We're still hypervigilant in many ways, or we're still having a lot of uncertainty or conflict with that. So that whole idea of the 5 R's and that resiliency, that is part of the underlying foundation, regardless then of whatever else we might need in terms of higher level of services or needing some additional backup in some way. So that compassionate conversation with yourself. Are we modeling to our kids that, oh, that's okay, we got this, or no problem, or oh, we'll get it next time, or oh, you're doing the best you can? Or are we saying, oh my God, if I would have planned better, oh my God, I should have done that, oh my God, I can't believe, right? And so with my young people all the time, are you being your own best friend or your own worst enemy? That is so powerful to have compassion, resilience, and it begins with ourselves in some way. Okay, the next one. I'm from Latrobe, so, and yes, it's Latrobe. If you're not from Latrobe, it's Latrobe, but I'm from Latrobe. And so Mr. Rogers is my hero. And so I love this quote. It's one of my all-time favorites, and I think it gives us a way to fish, if you will, in terms of dealing with behavioral or mental health issues. It's only natural that we and our children find many things hard to talk about, but anything human is mentionable, and anything mentionable can be manageable. The mentioning can be difficult, and the managing too, but both can be done if we're surrounded by love and trust. Like how powerful that is if you think, oh, I'm afraid to say, or I don't want to ask, especially when it comes to asking our kids, are you okay? And we're afraid what they're going to say, so we don't say anything, right? The biggest question, and I know Mara and Missy, they send this out to all of you, the Mayo Clinic, that little 3-minute video that you probably get plopped in every school year, ask the question, are you feeling so bad that you're thinking of killing yourself? You're not planting the seed. Our brain's job is to keep us alive. If you don't want to live, then something is out of balance, right? And so just like with a physical fever, this is my little metaphor that I wanted to leave with all of you. So a physical fever of 99, we're not taking you to the ER. We're going to keep an eye on you. We might take your temperature. We're going to kind of give you some popsicles, some fluids, whatever. That physical fever gets up to 104. If you're at school, we're taking you to the school nurse. I might take you to Med Express. We're calling the pediatrician. We're getting medical intervention. You could pass out. You could have a stroke. You could have a seizure, whatever. The emotional fever metaphor, 99. Life sucks. I don't want to be here. I don't want to die. I want my situation to change. You might not need an immediate evaluation, but again, we're going to figure out kind of what's going on with you. We're going to have that conversation. Did you stay up too late last night? Are you dealing with a breakup? Did you just have finals? Whatever it might be, to figure out what's going on. That emotional fever gets up to 104. Life sucks. I don't want to be here. I want to be dead yesterday. I will not be waking up tomorrow. We're not going to say, oh, go have a nap. See how you feel later. That's medical intervention we need to get back up. So I'd like you all to pull out your phones right now. And Mara, if we can click to, let's see what slide it is. It is slide.
Don't you worry, Paula.
I'm in Paula mode. I do not. Mara does wonderful, outstanding PowerPoints, and I am not the queen of that. Keep going. Keep going. Actually, can we go back 1 second, and then I promise I will give you both 5 minutes. So give me 1 second here. Back again, back again, back again. Okay, so again, wearing my SAP hat here. This is the sort of mantra in SAP. What are the observable behaviors of concern? So whatever you notice at whatever age level, that is your tool to fish. I mentioned the child mind. That's an awesome, it's not diagnosing, but it's helping you say, hey, here's what I'm concerned about. And then they generate, hey, this could be just some anxiety, that your kid's anxious, or this may be something that warrants something else. That's a great resource. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Again, can you tell that I do lots of suicide prevention work? Keep going. Okay, hang on, 1 sec. So a quick word about depression. Most folks that are depressed, regardless of age, are never suicidal. Especially in young people, almost all young people that are depressed are at risk for suicide. So that's why we want to make so sure that we know what the symptoms of depression are and that we seek intervention. It is actually a medical condition, just like diabetes, just like asthma, just like high blood pressure, that you can actually diagnose what it is. So it's not just, oh, somebody stepped on my new sneakers, I'm depressed. So I think that's one of those myths, that we overuse the term depressed and it loses all of the medical sort of validity and reliability with it. Okay, next one. Okay, so the caveat to this, the Prevent Suicide PA is an awesome resource on the school district's website under their selected resources on suicide prevention. I commend you all. There are outstanding resources on there. Prevent Suicide PA is one of them. To give you this in 30 seconds, had a student that had struggled with depression and did like a little public service announcement. And unfortunately, I can't find it online, but I'm going to name it to you right now. And he videotaped a change of classes, and it was really, really crowded. And you see this little furry yellow object in the back. As it comes closer, you realize it's a kid in a banana suit. And the punchline is, if depression was only as easy to spot. So the problem is with depression, I don't just do an x-ray, there's the broken bone. We're looking at symptoms, we're looking at over time, bits and pieces. So it's diagnosable, but it's not like taking a blood test. So just to put that out there, that it takes a lot more sort of sleuthing, if you will, in terms of that. All right, next one. I know you all have your phones out, so you're ready. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Okay, there it is. Okay, so pull out your phone, take a little picture. So this is the conversation that we have with every kiddo that I meet with. So whether or not I'm doing STAR outreach or whether or not I'm working with my SAP hat, and that is, oh, it's 2 in the morning, your friend texts you, man, that's it, I'm out of here, I'm done. And you're like, what the hell does that mean? You could wake up your caring adult that you're living with, or you can call Resolve. Resolve is our county's 24/7 crisis intervention and consultation. It's not a perfect system, but it is 24/7, and they are able to do a wellness check. They're able to have a conversation. They have a walk-in center. They can come to an individual. Every county in Pennsylvania has to have some version of this. So even as an adult, do I need to call Resolve? Right? Or, oh, I need to call before a crisis. I'm looking for some kind of resource that, again, we model for ourselves that there is a way out, that what we're feeling is temporary in some way. The text line, a lot of our students prefer to text, so to text PA to 741-741. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline has an online chat. For students that identify as GLBTQI, the Trevor Project is an outstanding resource for them. And then in terms of coming in June of 2022, actually right around the corner, we're having a national 988. So it's a behavioral health hotline as opposed to just 911. I did want to make a real quick in terms of trends. I also want to acknowledge that out of the pandemic, we are now recognizing that all that we don't know. So looking at specific risk factors or treatment modalities that might be more appropriate for GLBTQI youth or for youth of color, and making sure that we are expanding, you know, sort of our repertoire, if you will, of what we have to offer for students and families. Okay, I think.
Am I ready to go?
I need my time, yeah, because I want to make sure that my dear colleagues have enough time too. So, yeah, keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going. Oh, hold on, go back one more. Okay, this is really exciting. So in terms of evidence-based suicide prevention, look what you see there. Connected to school. Yippee, this really works. It's life-saving, right? Even though we still have holes in our safety net, but literally it's that strong. And notice it's also being connected to your family and whatever you identify your family to be. So that, I just wanted to make sure that I highlighted that, okay? And then, yeah, hold still one second. So this slide, take a picture of it if you're wanting to know in terms of where to go for help. It's a really helpful resource. One of the benefits of having going to your PCP is also then having telepsychiatry through children. So we have Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, Children's Hospital of Philly. That's one way sometimes to get around not being able to have access. Our employee assistance programs, parents, caregivers, again, looking for ourselves in terms of what we can do, and looking at sometimes university studies and clinical programs can be really helpful. Okay, keep going. Keep going. I mean, the good news is if you're diagnosed, prognosis tends to be very hopeful. It's the getting that diagnosis and getting the help that's not so great. So these are wonderful, wonderful. I tried to only pick 5. Okay, excellent facts for families, brief videos, and like applaud your own students. What a great video that was, right? To promote your own social emotional learning K through 12 that they've been able to access. Outstanding. And then local supports, the Allegheny Family Network and NAMI, they are outstanding. They represent individuals with lived experience. It's parent to parent. Again, take your phones out. Thank you so much for demonstrating that. This is another awesome one in terms of being able to have, again, it's free for heaven's sakes, and it's accessible, and it helps you to navigate. This becomes part of your own posse of support. And with that, I'm going to switch to segueing to my colleague, Sarah. Yeah, because I know we don't have enough time, except for my last quote. And it's a student that shared this with me. Life isn't the way it's supposed to be. Life is the way it is. It's how we cope that makes the difference. So go team, we're in this together. And my colleague Sarah is going to highlight some of the specific examples of those higher levels of care that I had mentioned.
All right, Dr. McCommons is always a tough act to follow, so bear with me. And I also want to be careful not to repeat anything anyone has said. My colleagues have done an awesome job tonight highlighting the continuum of care and the support services. I want to thank Pine Richland for having this. This is an incredible discussion, and I'm encouraged by the resources that are available within the school. So I'm going to walk through the services. You could go on to the next slide. That UPMC Western Behavioral Health currently has available, and I'm going to pay particular attention to those available at Pine Center in Wexford, just right up the road. So as discussed, we have our inpatient services in Oakland, and often a step down from inpatient is our acute partial hospital programs. So these programs are acute care services. They're intensive. They are 30 hours per week, so 6 hours per day, 5 days per week. Typically, children are admitted to these programs that have suicidality, self-harm behaviors, mood disorders. They're usually with us about 4 to 6 weeks. The treatment focuses mostly on milieu or group treatment, and so the children are pulled out for individual sessions, family sessions, and just to highlight the family sessions, it's so essential for a child's progress and for treatment to have family involvement. So I thank you for those that are here tonight and those that are listening online, because without your partnership, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. And it's important for us to make sure that the skills that kids are learning in these intensive services are continued at home, and that they continue to be successful without that level of intervention in place. Also, our partial hospital programs have, kids are with us all day, so school is an incredibly important component. We have a teacher on staff that works closely with Pine Richland School District to make sure that they're not missing too much of their schoolwork and that they're staying on target. and that they have the support that they need when it's time to go back to school. Our partial programs, we call them taper days, but it's essentially a day or two that we have the child come back to school while still enrolled in our program, so that we can check, is the treatment working? Are they okay? Does the school feel supported? Does the family feel comfortable? So that is something our partial hospital programs provide.
Now, Sarah, with the partial program, so it would be levels of services. So the student would receive about 6 hours of intensive therapy throughout the day, and then school would be what, 2 hours?
School is 2 hours.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. Also, in the program, specifically, we're working with kids to regulate their emotions, improve relationships with peers, live in the moment, develop healthy ways to cope. I think, this past 2 years with living through a pandemic, and, we all have needed to pay a little extra attention to our own mental health and wellness. So we have our acute partial hospital programs, and then we also have our intensive outpatient programs. So that is a step down when thinking about the continuum, as Lisa had explained. The intensive outpatient programs are 9 hours per week, so 3 hours per day, 3 days a week. And we also offer that at our Pine Center. So ages for the intensive outpatients at Pine Center is 8 to 18. We have some specialty clinics. So just to mention briefly, our STAR Center, that clinic is located in Oakland and is for, stands for Services for Teens at Risk, with a special focus on anxiety, depression, and or suicidality. And also Pine Center has our Pediatric Obsessive Compulsive Disorder Clinic, which is another specialty clinic. That is for children 5 to 18 years old. And that clinic provides both intensive outpatient services as well as outpatient services. So I've listed some other ones up there. Really, there's an entire continuum. There's a ton of services. I don't want to overwhelm you because this is a lot of information in one night. And I would just, mention that if you, just as Dr. McCommons outlined, if you have a concern or you have questions, there's tons of support available. And, start with an outpatient evaluation. Talk to the school. They can help get you connected. Talk with a service coordinator, and they can help get you connected for an evaluation. So that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And now we're going to have Sean talk a little bit about the Caring Place. And I have to just say, Sean has helped us throughout in the last couple of years. We have a great partnership where your team comes into the school, provides supports for students, staff, some great trainings for our staff members as well as families. So just excited to hear a little bit about some of those services.
Great, thank you so much. Hi everybody. So I work with the Highmark Caring Place. If you're not familiar, we're a grief center that supports children and adolescents after they've experienced the death of someone close to them. We're just about 10 minutes down the road, so our location is here in Warrendale, but we also have a location in downtown Pittsburgh. And our program's kind of unique. It's a free program to families that's offered at no cost. It's also a peer support program. So in thinking about some of the themes that we've already heard and early on, the goal is that connecting kids to other kids that understand what that's like, and that's really the goal of really what our program is. We are fortunate to have our program be staffed by wonderful volunteers. So I'm only one of 5 staff members. We're a pretty small staff. We can't do the work that we do with our grieving families without the wonderful assistance of our volunteers. I'm here today because I am our school services coordinator. As Dr. Paxton said, I've had the opportunity to work very closely with Pine Richland School District. I'm very fortunate to have a nice relationship with not just her, but the wonderful counselors here, school psychologists, and social workers at your district. The counselors here, the social workers, the school psychologists are trained in our model of grief support. So some of the services that we offer within schools in general is we provide professional development, so on how to support students that are grieving, what that's like to return back to school after they've experienced the loss of someone very close to them, how we can support them in that transition, how we can support that family, because that grief is just held so closely throughout all the family members. You know, that death is just a very small tip of the iceberg. There's such a ripple effect to every portion of that child or that teen's life after they've experienced that death of someone close to them. So we're, like I said, we work closely with schools to help prepare those students for return, help schools in consultative when maybe a student is diagnosed with a life-limited illness or a teacher is, and help them kind of navigate those waters. We do classroom presentations to help, you know, grief be a little bit easier to talk about. It's a tough subject. It's hard to talk about grief and loss. It's sad. It's scary. So we do classroom presentations with the students just to help them make it a little bit more manageable to talk about, right? Paula had that wonderful quote from Fred Rogers that anything's mentioned that we can be mentioned and manageable with loving and support of all these wonderful people that are up here, so we can help our students navigate through those waters. One of my key roles is running peer support groups at schools. So I come to schools and run peer support groups with school counselors. It's a partnership we've had with Pine Richland. The counselors, again, here are trained in our model, but it's also nice sometimes to have someone else in the community come and co-facilitate those groups with you and help in that planning and help with those resources and things like that. So we have those wonderful partnership to be able to do those. And, you know, those grief groups are what Dr. Paxton talked about earlier. You know, our kids are connecting to other kids that understand. They're identifying those people that have died. They're talking about those really tough feelings. They're around peers that understand, like, I'm having those similar feelings too. It's a chance to share memories about their special person that died. It's a chance to learn coping skills, positive coping skills. What are those things I can do? Who are those positive supports in my life that I can go to, like Dr. Paxton mentioned earlier. We're here really reflecting on the last 2 years too. You know, the last 2 years have been tough. It's been really, really hard for everybody. And kind of like Paula said, our kids, you know, just not even going outside and all those changes. So just like the collective grief and that collective loss that all of us have really felt over those last 2 years, that loss of self, that loss of self-control, control about the things we can handle, that we can't handle. We're approaching 1 million deaths due to COVID. We're just over 990,000. And if you think about that, this past year, there was a study done from the beginning of the pandemic to just June that 140,000 students are grieving right now the loss of a primary caregiver or a custodial grandparent. And that was just from a report that came out in October. So you can imagine those numbers are quite higher than 140,000 now. So just really those loss of everyday routines that we're experiencing, those loss of social supports, that loss of events that we look forward to. Imagine not having a funeral that you could plan because you can't go, and those important rituals and closure that goes to it. So thank you for having me. If there's anything else you'd like me to speak about, please just let me know.
That's wonderful. We have such a great relationship with everybody that's here today, and we want to just thank you all for coming. The partnerships that we have with all of you are amazing, and so proud to be part of those partnerships. Going from that continuum of supports of what we provide here at the school to more intensive services, and looking at services outside of the school, going into IOP, and then a great resource through the Caring Place. And going back to that resiliency model, we want to give our kids those skills, those preventive measures to bounce back when times are difficult. So I look at all these services, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And these are services offered in our community. Together, we need to really empower our students and support them and give them the supports that they need when times are difficult. So thank you. I thank all of you for coming out this evening. I thank all of our providers and definitely the relationships that we have. So thank you very much. Awesome. Have a great night. Thank you.